Hello again, Sandwich. I'm Greg Anderson. Welcome back to a discussion about the Sandwich Public Schools with Superintendent Dr. Joe Maruschek. This is a little program that we call Ask the Sup. He actually came up with a name, which is really cool.
Genius.
We do this monthly as a way to bring our questions to Dr. Joe to get a deeper or different perspective on the issues that you hear in school committee meetings, teacher meetings, online, the media, whatever. I should say that Dr. Joe does not check any of the questions that I'm going to ask, nor does he ask me to avoid any particular topic, which, as host, I appreciate. Dr. Joe, welcome.
Great to be here.
January, we did not do December.
No, so Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
That Larry David has this whole shtick about, like, past January 8th, it's not appropriate to say Happy New Year.
Yes.
We're taping this on January 25th. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well.
My friend.
Yes. Well, thank you. I have to ask you, do you like the vest?
I think it works. The vest with the jeans, with the kind of the Cole Haan Sketcher type look. I like it.
Okay.
2 thumbs up.
Paula said this is very slimming on me.
It is. I could make.
But she also said, "I like that little vest," which was
little vest.
Yes, exactly. It's all about me. You're a very fashionable dresser, so I wanted to ask you.
There's certain things that I'm very particular about. Things like homes, cars, electronics, clothes, shoes.
Yeah. The essentials.
Yeah.
The essentials.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for saying that I look really cool in my vest.
Midlife crisis.
Yeah. Oh, no. Okay, now all my vests are gone. I'm throwing them out. All right, Dr. Joe. Last night you had a presentation to the school committee.
Yes.
Dramatic television. It was
must-see TV.
Must-see TV.
For a Wednesday night.
Good news is that fiscal year 25 budget has been unanimously passed.
Correct.
By the school committee.
Correct.
I'm going to get into some of the details, but tell us what happens from here.
So really at this point, and Sandwich is a community, and I think it's by charter, we're very, very early in the budget process. The irony being always the fourth Wednesday in January by state laws when the governor releases his or her budget, and Governor Healy released her budget yesterday. And that's considered at the state level to be the very, very beginning, that House 1 budget.
Okay.
And here we were as a school committee, we've kind of used the entire month of January where the principals and all of the cost center directors made their presentations, and then I kind of gave the overall presentation, and they voted to approve it, which is great. But really, for all intents and purposes, the next steps are presentations to both the FinCom and to the Board of Selectmen to get their approval as well. And ultimately, the timetable will go to March. Probably March. There will be the final recommendation from the Select Board that goes to town meeting for the first week of May.
Do you anticipate any hurdles within FinCom or the Board of Selectmen?
I do not. It's kind of interesting, as you probably ascertained from the presentation yesterday. We are really looking to find efficiencies and reinvest into capital expenditures, and specifically things related to the facilities. Over the last 3 to 4 weeks, we've done a series of tours with, I think we're about pretty much 3/4 of the Select Board and FinCom, touring all 3 schools with myself and Chris George, our Director of Facilities, getting feedback from the principals. And I think that it's been a whole series of really positive conversations and a lot of receptiveness, and kind of looking at, hey, these are some of the critical needs that we have for our schools.
Yeah.
So I'm cautiously optimistic. I think also the budget that we've put forward for the operational budget, the meat and potatoes to keep level services, that is, to keep the same programs and services in place for our kids, is very, very fair and very reasonable.
How much did you increase deferred maintenance or not even that, CapEx, capital improvements. How much did you increase that for fiscal
By
year 20?
200,000. And
Okay.
one of the key pieces that the school committee and I both feel very, very strongly about is to do over a 3-year period to completely redo the carpeting / flooring at Oak Ridge and Forestdale. If you recall, about a year ago, we had the misfortune of a frozen pipe and at Forestdale, and we literally had to replace the flooring in something like 9 classrooms.
Yeah.
In actually living through that and working with, we had Service Master come out to see classroom flooring that got flooded and seeing, oh, these are 30-year-old carpets, and they are disgusting.
Yeah.
It became like...
It's like disgusting on many levels.
Exactly.
I mean, it's dirt, it's grime, it's
and you're also
gross.
sometimes talking about 5- and 6-year-olds and commensurate bodily fluids, not to be too graphic.
I'll use the word booger.
Exactly.
I'll use the word booger. I said it.
Yeah. And so we've decided to make that a real priority. Our kids, our teachers, they deserve it. So it'll be a 3-year project, 200,000, 200,000, 200,000 to do both schools completely. But we also have other capital requests in to the town as well, specifically related to things like student furniture, to upgrade our locker rooms that are also in difficult condition, to do a serious upgrade of our security cameras across all 3 schools. Because believe it or not, we're still on an analog system. And there's some limitations of what we can do. So a lot of capital requests, but I think it's really helpful when the folks that really are the decision makers can see these things firsthand and interact with our principals, with staff members, with students, and see how it actually plays out in the life of the school.
So the issue of school safety is certainly part of your CapEx. Can you be more specific about what you need, and are you concerned that you'll have enough money in the budget to get the schools as safe as you want them to be?
I have confidence that we will, because across the board, school security is of the highest priority to myself, to our leadership team, and to the school committee. About a year ago, we had an outside firm come in and do kind of a security audit of our schools. They did mention some of the issues around security camera, as far as just the quality of resolution, but also coverage.
Yeah.
But then also other issues, things that you kind of take for granted. Some of our doors, our exterior doors, and particularly at the middle high school with the large sprawling campus, those doors have been in place probably for decades. You have situations where, because of the use of salt and so on during the winter months, you have corrosion, and literally you have the bases of the door jambs that have been rusted out.
Yeah.
So those need replacing. That obviously has some security implications as well.
Did you get approval on those door barricades? Those, trying to think of what the name was. We talked
So the
about
product itself is called Nightlock.
Yes.
And it's still something that is playing out. We are still working very, very closely with the town. In town, we do have a Commission on Disability who has been fairly vocal in its objection to it.
Because it's not a device that all can use, all can do, or there are limitations.
The issue is that it's a device. It's a device that an individual in a wheelchair could have issues with accessibility, However, I do want to stress, and again, I'm not trying to be evasive about the situation, any student, and in a case, we actually have one staff member who is in a wheelchair, but particularly with a student, that type of situation, the student would never, ever be alone. If you have any student that has significant mobility or cognitive needs, there's a very, very good chance that that student has a one-on-one aide, or there are multiple adults.
Okay.
So it's something that's still playing out. I feel I've had a series of meetings. I do feel very, very strongly that our school department and the town side are working through this issue very, very closely.
Back on the issue of deferred maintenance, in my day job, I work as a consultant in the senior living industry, and part of my job is to go to communities, assisted living communities across the country, senior living communities, and help whatever the issue is that they may be struggling with, occupancy, whatever. Capital improvements is such an issue as it relates to buildings that are banged up and old,
Sure,
that need new carpeting or painting just to compete. But it can literally impact whether someone wants to do business with this community
Absolutely.
or not. In the discussion about CapEx in your buildings, and you definitely have a need, the comments about enrollment and am I wanting my kid to go to a school where I'm paying a lot of taxes, but the buildings are so, banged up? How much do you think the condition of your buildings and enrollment are connected?
I think the enrollment piece, Greg, is, I liken it to a 1,000-piece puzzle. It's not just one thing, it's multiple things. Do folks sometimes judge a book by its cover? They do. Mm-hmm. And in doing our tours and the conversations that we've had at the school committee level, sometimes the discussion has been, hey, we are Sandwich, and we do have this thing called community pride. And I think about the places that are kind of the high volume, high traffic areas. If you're at Forestdale or at Oak Ridge, the multipurpose room, when we're having parent nights or student performances and so on, that's a snapshot into the school that everybody sees. So, part of our conversations is like, hey, in the case of Forestdale, that is the original 1990, 1991 paint, this kind of god-awful turquoise. I guess turquoise was a 90s thing.
Yikes.
But, we need to give that a facelift. We need to give the furniture a facelift because that's the high-profile area. The chair of our school committee, Kevin Sorrow, who's also president of Sandwich Youth Basketball, always talks about, with a great deal of pride, it's upwards of something like 33% of all of the kids between grades, I think K through 6, play basketball through SYB. That's amazing. I think about the Oak Ridge and Forestdale gyms, which on any given weekend day are packed with kids and families. So I think, giving attention to that, we shouldn't have to have situations where there are bleachers that you can't pull them out, where, the wood has gotten to the point where every so often you get kids who have splinters from the wood from the bleachers and so on.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of little things like that. Yeah. And I get it. I've been a superintendent for 12 years and 10 years before that, a high school principal. When times are tough, sometimes you've got to make some really, really difficult decisions. And unfortunately, I understand the concept of deferred maintenance, because if you're talking about, hey, I've got a crisis in the 3rd grade with kids struggling to read,
Yeah.
and I need to make a decision about a reading specialist or buying new rugs, chances are I'm going to go with the reading specialist.
Yeah.
And again, this is not the blame game. This isn't pointing fingers. But I think in years past, when things have been lean, difficult decisions have had to be made. But I'm sure they've been made through the lens of doing what's right for kids.
So the blame game I totally get, but your predecessors, earlier school committees, people that live in the community and vote at town meeting,
Sure.
we're all kind of to blame for the buildings being in the condition that they are right now, correct?
Not necessarily, in the sense that, the person that I can speak to the most is my immediate predecessor, Pam Gould. I can say firsthand, and honestly, I've never had an explicit conversation with Pam, but I can say firsthand, particularly in doing a lot of research when I was investigating this community, I know Pam and Chris George's predecessor, John Nelson, God bless his soul, they were doing everything in their power to get more investment into the facilities. So again, I can't speak for Richard Canfield or Mary Ellen Johnson or anything like that, but I don't think Sandwich is atypical. I think generally speaking, across the Commonwealth and across this entire nation, we've got issues with maintaining our facilities. I've told some school committee members, I frequently meet with my colleagues up and down the Cape. I consider next door Barnstable Sarah Ahern to be a good friend. Barnstable has a lot of significant concerns with regard to their facilities, and sometimes we commiserate.
Yeah.
Commiserate, rather. So
I was going to correct you.
Thank you.
You are the superintendent, and that's just embarrassing.
And I also am the grammar police, so I do self-police.
But let me call you on something else, and maybe it's just a misstep. I'm not sure you answered the question as it relates to, do you think that enrollment is impacted by the banged-up nature of the buildings? Have you heard anybody say, I want something pretty?
No, because my biggest concern is and where we see the most migration is between grades 8 to 9. Forestdale is probably actually looking at an enrollment increase of between 20 and 30 students next year. So that's very much impacted by birth rate. Look, I'm not looking to take a pot shot or anything, but I would compare, if you've seen the Sturgis campus that's on Main Street in Hyannis, it's a converted old department store. Sandwich Middle High School is the Taj Mahal compared to that building.
Yeah.
So it's one factor. I mean, I think when push comes to shove, people make decisions based upon quality of programming, quality of relationships, the sense of belonging that their child is going to have with the school.
On the topic of enrollment, right now, and just tell me if my numbers are correct, right now there are 2,156 students enrolled.
That's our official October 1st enrollment, yep.
Okay. That is down about 1% to 2% from the year prior.
Correct.
And your estimates for next year are about 30-something, 35, 34.
Correct. Fewer.
What do you attribute that to?
Well, if you look at the migration, again, the biggest issue is what do we do to stem the tide from that 8th to 9th grade transition?
Right.
So if you were to look at the data over the last 4 to 5 years is you are losing anywhere between 30 to 35% of students going from 8th to 9th grade. And that could be Upper Cape Tech, it could be Sturgis, it could be John Paul II, or a private school.
Right.
And again, I go back to the 1,000-piece puzzle. It's a whole multitude of factors that families make their decision. Sometimes it then it becomes simply a factor of siblings, and if you had a sibling get into Sturgis or Upper Cape Tech and they've had a positive experience, then it becomes kind of a foregone conclusion.
They follow, yeah.
So we've got work, but you also have to realize too that some of those classes that are migrating through, if we were having this conversation, Greg, 5 or 6 years ago, a typical class going through Forestdale and Oak Ridge was well over 200 students. Now they're more in the 170 to 180 range.
Okay.
So if you're losing 30 to 35%, then that becomes smaller at the high school. So for example, this year's freshman class is only 117 kids. That's small.
Wow.
And we will be graduating, I want to say about 140, 145. So it is about choice, but it's also about a smaller population in the town of Sandwich, or a smaller school-age population in the town of Sandwich.
Are there any comparables between your enrollment numbers and other Cape towns?
Oh, the one that I kind of cite that is a place that has lost a lot of students is next door in Bourne. Bourne High School is down to about 380 students, 9 through 12. And that's a significant concern, because that obviously has implications for what you can offer kids academically.
Yeah.
Has implications for athletics, that you'll have fewer and fewer students, so that you have to start looking at more co-op opportunities to even field a team and so on. So I think we're very fortunate. We're blessed here in Sandwich. We are still offering a top-notch program to our kids. Again, on our website is the budget book. I try to have the data, but I also try to tell a story. If you look at a lot of the data, things very objective, like MCAS data, like how our kids do on AP tests, our best and brightest, we're considered to be an AP silver medal honor roll school by the College Board.
Yeah.
For the second year in a row, I put out the data with regard to the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education tracks college completion and earnings of graduates since the class of 2010.
Oh, interesting.
If you stack up Sandwich versus all of our neighboring and all the Cape communities, it's not even close. I think this year I cited the class of 11 and the class of 16. On average, and again, it's a little big brother that they can cull this data, but on average, our kids who have stayed in state that are gainfully employed are earning upwards of $5,000 to $6,000 more per year than the number 2 community. So our kids do very well.
That's a great
I think
number.
we have a very competitive program. I think it's just consistently connecting with kids, connecting with the families, but also pushing out the news about the good things that are happening.
Speaking of salaries, in your new budget, overall salaries are increasing. But there's a decrease of about $200,000, just north of $200,000 in special ed. What do you attribute those cuts to? What's being cut?
Sure. Well, first off, the special ed piece, the biggest savings is there's always a 1-year delay in reimbursement from the state. It's known as circuit breaker funding. Okay. So we had a big bump last year in the number of kids that were out of district placements. So we have that money that we're getting a year after the fact. So I think it was something the magnitude of about $186,000 we can charge to circuit breaker rather than the operational budget. So that was a considerable savings. I think also with regard to, there's still a lot of X factors with respect to the overall salary lines for the simple reason 4 out of the 5 of our collective bargaining units were just entering negotiations.
Okay.
So it's a little bit looking at the market, looking at what a fair and reasonable cost of living adjustment is, looking at what are your obligations as far as step increases and what are known as lane increases based upon attainment of advanced degrees. But again, the point that I made last night is there's a certain degree of budget right-sizing going on. I've been very clear and explicit based upon looking at enrollment, reducing positions commensurate with enrollment. And in some places where you kind of look at the class sizes and you say, okay, is that a reasonable class size? Can we have it, replaced or amalgamated through other teacher schedules and so on. So right now, based upon the retirements that we've received and some attrition, there's fewer positions in that budget.
Okay.
A total, I believe I said 3 teaching positions and 6 para-educator positions.
All in special ed or within?
Oh no, it's across the board.
Across the board.
Yeah.
Okay. If I'm a teacher in Sandwich, am I happy with the professional development offerings that the school district is providing me?
In my humble opinion, yes, you are. I think we can always improve, but what I look at is just the Friday before MLK Day, January 12th, we had a full PD day. Our new assistant superintendent, Dr. Dave Quinn, really spearheaded and organized what I consider to be a really rich array of offerings, very much aligned with some of our strategic directions. We had a keynote speaker around technology and having the appropriate balance, both in the home but also in the classroom. We did sessions, extended sessions on the use of culturally proficient practices. Like, what are we doing to ensure kids and families from diverse backgrounds have a really strong rooting, a strong sense of belonging in our schools? So we did a lot of work around that, different sessions of interest around AI and what are some of the implications for teaching and learning. The feedback that we got, and we send out a formal survey, was overwhelmingly positive.
Oh, good.
So I think there's always more work that we can do to tailor-made. If you're somebody like a school social worker or you are an art teacher at grade 6, you might want something a little more specific to your daily world, and we try to do that work during our Wednesday early release days. Yeah. But I think by and large, there is a high degree of satisfaction.
Speaking of culturally diverse and differences of opinions, I want to bring up banned books.
Okay.
The Boston Globe earlier this week, January 17th, their article, dozens of Massachusetts school districts, have faced attempts to remove books from schools. So in this article, school districts have received challenges to about 70 books. Challenges meaning someone has said, I don't like it, and it gets elevated to your level. Some were banned, some have restrictions. Sandwich is included in this group with Abington, Ludlow, Marblehead, Medfield, Melrose, North Attleboro, Westwood, Wrentham, and Wilmington. The biggest city schools, Boston, Springfield, Worcester, did not seem to have any books banned, restricted, whatever. There were 3 books that were attached to the Sandwich schools in this article. One is Totally Joe, Pirates of Penzance, which is really, that's like the classic Pirates of Penzance.
I'm thinking Johnny Depp.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And then The Great Reset. And according to the article, the only one that has some restrictions on it is Totally Joe. I want to ask you, you read the article, What's your reaction?
I was angry, but also remarkably disappointed.
Why angry?
Because what is in that article, Greg, is completely factually inaccurate.
Okay.
It's to my knowledge that, if my memory serves me correctly, the Boston Globe very early on, I want to say probably in September, sent out a public records request to town libraries, but also to school districts. I can speak to what I responded for the Sandwich Public Schools. I basically said we don't have restrictions. I can speak to that one book, Totally Joe. It is part of a 6th grade classroom library. I did receive, as did the Oak Ridge School, an objection to the book. I did have a meeting with the parents, and very, very fair and reasonably minded parents who kind of shared what their concerns about the book were. But in no way, shape, or form have we banned the book. I think the resolution was we shared with this set of parents, and really with any parent that would have a concern, hey, these are classroom library books. These are the titles. These are the authors.
Do your research, see what you think.
Yeah, and if you have a concern about your child reading it, by all means, there's choice, there's other options, and so on. I know I have a high degree of confidence in what I'm expressing. Our principals would express that. Our classroom teachers would express that. And for that to be published in the Boston Globe without any follow-up or any confirmation, that I never reported to the Globe, hey, there's an issue with the book Totally Joe or anything like that.
Because the Globe is saying that you put a restriction on it, meaning parents need to, there's an approval process for parents, for their children to be seeing that book.
And that's categorically false.
Okay, so then the other two books, Pirates of Penzance and The Great Reset, where does that come?
That's completely news to me.
So probably somewhere between September, when you got that survey, and the 17th, when the article came out, somebody called the Globe and said, hey, there's more to talk about with Sandwich.
Yeah, and those other two books, and realize the issue over Totally Joe was very early on in the school year. And again, I had the opportunity to meet with the parents, to have a discussion with them. I've had follow-up discussions with Trish Hill, the principal, and so on. And I think our school district has a very reasonable approach when there's concerns. And, and again, I respect parents' rights. I respect, when there's a concern over content that may or may not be age or developmentally appropriate. Mm-hmm. That particular book in question, Totally Joe, was part of a classroom library set for the 6th grade through this new literacy series. It's written at an appropriate grade level, level. In my opinion, there isn't anything in it that would be considered to be objectionable. I think the parents' concern, I heard them out. I understand what their concerns were and kind of the larger gestalt as well. But as far as us changing our policy or getting into a situation where we're banning books and so on, I just think what appeared in the Globe was an incredible mischaracterization.
So there are no books, to your knowledge, that have been banned?
None.
Are there any books that have any restrictions around them?
None.
What is the process if I'm a parent and I need to raise an objection? How do I do that? Do I go to the teacher?
Yeah, I think you would follow the typical chain of command and express your concerns first to the classroom teacher.
Yeah.
Meet with them, have a conversation, bring it to the attention of the principal, and then if there still isn't resolution, please come to me and let's have a conversation about it.
But your message is also that parents have a responsibility to look at that book list, and they can find that where? On
our website.
On your website, so they can go through and do the research and see, okay, my kids are probably going to be exposed to Totally Joe. What's that book about? They can do the research and then flag anything that they may find objectionable in that course of
Absolutely. And realize too, there's the element of works that are done with all kids, but then there's also going to be the element of having a really rich classroom library where kids can pick books based upon their reading level, based upon their interests, and so on.
Yeah.
And we've invested a significant amount in a brand new literacy program known as ARC, American Reading Company, that one of the things that's really attractive about it is it gives a whole rich set of texts for kids to choose from.
But with gender inclusion and LGBTQ, all of this, what a conservative in our community might say is a little on the "don't push that on my kid" notion. Banning a book is probably the easiest way to say, I don't want my kids reading about gay kids. I don't want them reading about. Do the books become the lightning shot that gets your attention?
They could, but I think you also have to be realistic about, yes, I can understand. I can understand the notion of please don't push an agenda on my kid. Okay, I understand that. But the flip side is kids need to be exposed to the world in which they live. Okay, and this particular book, Totally Joe, while we're on it, great name, by the way.
I do think that's an interesting name.
The lead character is a middle school boy, and he is gay. But him being gay, and actually when this did come about, I got a copy of the book. I actually read Totally Joe, and it's kind of an interesting, entertaining book. But kind of him being gay and his identity really isn't the crux of the book. It's about a slice of life of a middle school student. And it's kind of like written in the form A through Z of 26 different lessons, and it's kind of a diary and so on. And I think you can make the compelling case that students need to be exposed to people and situations of the world that we live in. There are students at Oak Ridge who are 5th and 6th graders who are gay, who may be struggling with their identity and so on, the joy that is puberty and prepubescent and all that stuff. We have students that come from households where they have gay parents, or they come from different cultures and different backgrounds. I think it's incumbent upon us as educators to expose the kids to the world that they live in. It doesn't mean we have an agenda. It doesn't mean we're trying to indoctrinate. And there is sometimes a judgment call. There is sometimes a balance. I don't want to see something that, again, from an age or maturity level is not appropriate for kids.
Right.
So I do try to have this moderate approach, And I think overwhelmingly our educators have that alignment as well.
Did you get any backlash from parents on the Boston Globe article?
I haven't heard from a single one. Not a single one.
Do people read the Globe anymore?
I think it, unfortunately, Greg,
or any newspaper?
It's a sad snapshot of America, of society, when people, so many people report that they're getting their news from Facebook. It is a little bit horrifying.
Yeah.
I do read the Boston Globe every day. I was alerted to that article from an educator. A teacher pointed it out to me, but I haven't heard from a single parent.
Yeah, okay. Dr. Joe, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Midway through the school year.
It is. Today's day 91, and in 9 days, day 100, High Holy Day of first graders.
Oh, wow.
It is always a remarkable celebration, day 100 at Forestdale, because, again, they're counting, they're doing math. So there's always this incredible celebration of 100 whatever. Some classrooms, the kids have to dress up as if they're 100 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a lot of nice math projects and stuff.
Well, if any of the parents are looking for an idea as to how to dress like a 100-year-old, he's right there.
A very sharp 100-year-old, okay?
Speaking of my vest, I have not exhaled since I started this program.
It's kind of more of a corset than a vest, isn't it?
Oh, man, alive. What is going on here? Dr. Joe, thank you so much.
Thank you,
I appreciate
as
you
always.
coming in. And Sandwich, I will see you soon. Thank you so much for joining us. AskOurSuperintendent@gmail.com is the email. Send your questions to me. I'll bring them right here. I'll see you soon.